Let's talk about row counters and stitch counters for crochet. And I'm going to share with you a lightweight one that I built myself. I'm May, and this is May's Crochets. I'm a beginner crocheter just starting off on my learning to crochet journey. And I've been thinking a lot about how best I want to track my rows and stitches, especially as I'm learning. I think that some people maybe are able to kind of not track their stitches and rounds, and you can always maybe go back and see and kind of count the stitches, count the rows, and maybe some people kind of freehand it that way. I'm sure plenty of people are very sort of analog and they use pencil and paper or pen and paper or the actual written pattern and marks on it, or even the computer, like typing up on a document or something, your count, which is totally fine, totally understandable. But so far, all of the patterns that I've been doing them online. I haven't actually had a printed version. And so I've been experimenting with different ways to count. And yes, I definitely do need to count and track my stitches. There are times when I can I can certainly verify the kind of the number of stitches that I've made in a round, depending what yarn I'm using, things like that. But I feel like I definitely still want another way to track where I'm at because otherwise I'm going to lose track. And I've had a couple of times where I've been using yarn that was a little bit harder to count the rounds and I've kind of lost track and I just had to give up and start over because I just wasn't totally sure if I was on round 9 or round 10, things like that. So, yes, I do think counters are a really good thing to use. There's a bunch of apps out there. I did try one. I believe it's called My Row Counter that it seems like a lot of people like. I did really like it. It's very flexible. It has a lot of features. I only kind of used more of the minimal features. It's nice because you can have multiple counters. And so I did use it to track my rounds, my rows, as well as my stitches. For learning, it felt like actually tracking the stitches and especially the rows that are not just single crochet. So if you're doing you know, two single crochet and an increase 7 times, that's where I felt like it was really good to have the stitch counting because it's so easy to lose track. And I would sometimes, go back and restart and count, not restart, but just count from the beginning of my first stitch marker. But having that extra kind of marker of count of this is how many stitches I've done in this round was really, really helpful. So I used the app. It was nice to have the two different counters, but there were some things that I didn't love about it. You had to, every time you reset, which I did at the end of every round for the stitch count, there was a confirmation, which was one extra little step to do. There's ads, you can pay for an upgraded version, which is might very well be worth it if you're using it a lot. But yeah, I also, let me show you this. This is a stitch counter that I have left over from when I used to knit some. And so this actually, it goes on the end of a knitting needle, which is nice that it just sort of stays there and you can update, for, I guess, usually for rows, with knitting. You can just turn the numbers. And so I tried using this at one point as a stitch marker or a stitch counter, and it just takes a lot of effort because you have to take your hands off of the crochet every time to use two hands to turn this. This seems better suited as a row counter and not so much as a stitch counter. I know they sell different variations on physical objects like this. Some of them are similarly clunky, I guess, or you have to I think it's maybe good for row counting, but again, for stitch counting, it's you to have to kind of move your hands every time to change something. I mean, no matter what, you're gonna have to do that, even with the online or app tool. But it's easier if you can do it with one hand than two hands. I know they also sell rings, I guess, that you can sort of tap as you're going, and maybe that's a little bit easier so that you can sort of keep your hands together in crocheting position. Maybe I should experiment with that. But I actually am a coder in my day job. And so I figured, let me just build what I want. I want it to be super lightweight. I'm sure there's plenty of room for features to add in the future, but all that I wanted was a basic counter with rows and stitches. So two separate counters that you could easily reset without like clunkiness and confirmations and things like that. So, yeah, let me share it with you. Okay, so here it is. I will link it below in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. But here is my row and stitch counter. It's really lightweight and simple. There's no ads, there's no login, anything like that. It's just two counters, rows and stitches, and a reset button. So I'm going to, let's say I start with my first round. Let me go up one. I'm going to do my stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, ready for the next round. Let's just go up to 2 and reset the stitches down to 0 and go again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, here we go. And now I'm done and I'm going to start everything again. So yeah, super lightweight, just click, 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 reset. There is no confirmation that you're resetting, so you have to kind of be extra careful. That's what I wanted. I didn't want the extra like step of you must confirm. And I have had more than one time where I've accidentally reset the wrong one, where I wanted to reset to the stitch count and I actually reset the row count. So, got to be careful with that. But I was able to like remember, I think, what row count I was on also. So yeah, here it is. This is my row and stitch counter. Again, I'll link it below if you want to try it for yourself. So I've been using it for crocheting. I think you could also use it for knitting. Maybe I'll get to the point where I only need to track the rows and not the stitches. I mean, you can always sort of count up the stitches in the round as you go around, depending maybe on the type of yarn and how easy they are to see. I mean, you can also sometimes count the rounds pretty easily, but it's nice just to have like another way to keep track. I kind of sometimes am like a little bit super careful about that and even sometimes want like more than one method. There are times when I'll use the online counter and then as well as my row counter, analog row counter here. Just to like make sure so that, I can avoid those moments of like, oh, did I click the button? If I have two ways of keeping track, that's just like extra careful. And then if ideally I can also sort of recount myself, which I also do just to make sure I'm super careful. I'm sure some people out there are much more like, whatever, just go with it. Maybe the count doesn't matter so much. And like, maybe you can tell carefully by counting yourself, or maybe if you're off by one, it's like not the end of the world, all of that. But anyway, I wanted to share this tool with you that I built in case anyone else will find it useful as well. So yeah, thank you so much for keeping me company, and I'll see you next time. Bye.